It's now certain that Binance is not going to bail out FTX. CZ has tweeted that as a result of corporate due diligence, as well as the latest news reports regarding mishandled customer funds and alleged US agency investigations, we have decided that we will not pursue the potential acquisition of FTX.com. Now, this news, of course, crashed the market even further. We are now at 16K for Bitcoin. But what's even more impacted by all of this is Solana. So when we look at the last 24 hours, what went down most? Of course, the FTX token, FTT, but now also Solana caught up. 1 day ago, Solana was still among an average performer. I mean, the over market went down. It went down by like 10-15%, but Solana was pretty much in line with that. Now Solana is heading the pack, so to speak, of all the altcoins in terms of losses. And that makes sense because Solana is very closely tied to FTX, as described in yesterday's video. Now, is there really zero hope that nothing will get fixed over here? There's still a sliver of hope. It looks like Singapore might be bailing out FTX, potentially. So Singapore's state fund, Temasek, might be bailing out. So Temasek is a Singaporean state holding company owned by the government of Singapore with currently 630 billion assets under management. So that's definitely enough to bail SBF out of all of this. But the main question is probably not even a monetary question, because when we read this here in detail again, right? The problem that CZ had over here was not necessarily that there's too much money that has to flow in order to honor the customers' withdrawals. The main problem here seems to be the US agency investigations. And when you follow our Telegram group over here, right? So Bitcoin Strategy channel, simply search for that within Telegram. You will also find a reference to this. So this seems to now be confirmed by Reuters. US regulator probes FTX over handling of client funds. So we are actively discussing this over here. Feel free to join the Telegram group. I'm also active over here and give my 2 cents around the current developments. Now, I have seen other tweets. I can't pull them out anymore. I have seen other tweets that there are OTC dealings going on. So people are selling their FTX accounts for 16 cents on the dollar. So when you've got a $1 million account, it's now being sold across the gray market for 160K. So the market seems to now price in that there's a 16% chance that you can recover your funds that are locked up in FTX. Pretty low, and this might obviously change as the news develop. Now, I personally navigate this situation similar to the Terra Luna collapse. Now, what happened with Terra Luna? We had the big collapse, and then following that ecosystem collapse, we had a lot of contagion. Now, not a lot of people have FTT token exposure, but a lot of entities might have direct holdings on FTX or might also have exposure to Solana. This is not uncommon at all. And seeing Solana further fall, I think is very, very likely. If the situation doesn't resolve itself, then Solana is now just a ticking time bomb waiting to go close to zero as well. Now that means in the end that similar to Terra Luna, where we then had the contagion to 3 Arrows Capital that caused another dip down, that this could also just be the very first crash, the initial crash. And we can't yet really foresee what other entities might also have to capitulate due to this move. So I personally simply now wait for the dust to settle. I do not have any kind of particular price prediction, as in what price level is fair for Bitcoin to stabilize. We really can't say that, right? This is now a news-driven environment. This is not just a TA-driven environment. So you want to prepare yourself for news impact. If nothing goes bad in the next 1 or 2 months and the price is still at similar levels, then I think it does make sense to enter the market again, because then probably the contagion isn't that bad. If there is another fallout, then of course we see lower prices. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? If you want to DCA into Bitcoin over the long term. So I think it's all about market timing now. It's less about the actual level of what's a fair value for Bitcoin, because this is obviously already a pretty low level, but it doesn't mean it can't go lower. It can obviously go lower if other entities are forced to sell due to also becoming bankrupt as a result of all of this. So I just stay put, I wait and see, and only once things stabilize, I get in again. I do not think that the FTX implosion is now going to be the big catalyst that lets a lot of people enter the market. The overall macro environment is still pretty bearish. The Nasdaq, of course, continues to fall. Interest rates continue to rise. Property prices haven't yet fallen, but inventory is very high, so they might also fall soon. Bond prices have already fallen, of course, because of the interest rate hikes. So we've got a lot of liquidity tightening going on, a lot of liquidity crunches. And so a V-shaped recovery where everybody is now excited about this low price that pushes us back up to new highs again, I think is unlikely. I think what's more likely, if there is a recovery anytime soon, is something like a U-shaped recovery, something similar to what we have seen here in February of 2014, where Mt. Gox collapsed, right? We had our Silk Road shut down. That was like in, I believe, November of 2013. Then we had the Mt. Gox hacks and the Mt. Gox shut down. And then we got our continued bear market that then, after a while, when people dollar cost averaged in, turned around in a U form, right? But it took a year to actually turn around. I think something like this is more likely, or also comparable to 2019, right? After the final minor capitulation. Something like this, where we do have a bit of time to dollar cost average in, is more likely than a recovery that is V-shaped, what we have seen during Corona. Because there is no liquidity going around. Very few people are saving a lot of money. Inflation is high. People rather are forced to withdraw from the investments rather than adding more money to the markets. And so there's simply not a lot of cash laying on the sidelines that can simply just push this up. And when a major player such as FTX goes bust, this is obviously also not confidence inducing. So people say buy when there is blood in the streets, and I partially agree with this, but you can take your time depending on what kind of crash you see. And when it's a fundamental crash like this, it's not just a short-term politically induced crash like with Corona, then there is time to pick this up. And so I do think that it makes a lot of sense to wait until the dust settles and then maybe buy in by the end of this year or maybe beginning of next year. I don't think that we will be at 23K at that point in time. We'll probably be either be lower or at a similar level. And if nothing collapsed until then the contagion might not be as bad, and it could make sense to get your feet wet again and slowly buy back in. Thanks again for watching. Looking forward to see you in the Telegram channel, right? Simply search for Bitcoin Strategy channel within the Telegram app. And of course, see you in the next video. Bye-bye.